is indeed a too-close bill only, is amending the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act number 3 of 2003 so as to put stiffer penalties, Mr. Speaker. I emphasize that my bill has only 2 clauses and it is only amending the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act so as to put stiffer penalties to those engaging in corruption, Mr. Speaker. In fact, Mr. Speaker, my first proposal of this bill was actually to have much stiffer penalties than the one that passed through the JLAC, Mr. Speaker. I had actually proposed hanging to some threshold of corruption, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I am proposing this registration in the realization that, as it is presently, a person convicted of an offense under the Act is liable to a fine not exceeding 1 million shillings or an imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years or both, Mr. Speaker. There has been a surge in corruption cases in this country, and one way of dealing with corruption is enhancing the consequences of engaging in such activities. Unless the menace of corruption is dealt with, Mr. Speaker, corruption will continue to hamper the economic growth and development of our country due to the loss of public funds. However, Mr. Speaker, there has been a series of attacks on the bill and the proposer, including misinformation that the bill is aimed at curtailing the powers of DCI and the DPP. Mr. Speaker, this deliberate misinformation is not only an attack at the member for Kiharu constituency, but indeed an affront to the legislative authority of this House and the individual members, especially those of us who have more than 30 bills to their name and more than 100 others whose legislative proposals are in the pipeline, Mr. Speaker. This House has legislated against fake news and use of digital media to mislead the public. Mr. Speaker, the effect of this trend now coming up in 5-fold as follows: that individuals and institutions outside Parliament will now have the audacity of curtailing the legislative authority of Parliament under the Article 95 of the Constitution by twisting the objects of published bills especially to poison the mind of the public against the institution of Parliament. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, that the individual members may now be discouraged from proposing registration or even taking part in making law, Mr. Speaker. Number 3, Mr. Speaker, that other individual members may be discouraged from supporting registrations in this House, including bills emanating from the executive, which, of course, Mr. Speaker, would be a retrogressive trend. Number 4, Mr. Speaker, that this House will henceforth allow the media to continue misreporting on legislative matters before it, especially the mainstream media, which enjoy certain privileges and facilities accorded by Parliament through taxpayers' money. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, that since after the publication of the bill became property of the House and the relevant committee is required to seek public views, Mr. Speaker, those views